It had been 5 days since Julia last came home. I brought a cake to the institute, hoping to surprise her for her birthday. Through the reinforced lab glass, I saw Kyle, her new mentee, covering her eyes as he presented a cake of his own, candles already glowing. I called her. She ignored me 4 times before finally answering, her voice cold as ice. "What is it? Didn't I tell you not to interrupt me when I'm working? I just wanted to wish you a happy birthday. I don't have time for that kind of pointless sentimentality." She hung up. A moment later, through the window, I saw her laughing, playing along with Kyle as she closed her eyes to make a wish. The old me would have stormed in, demanding to know what was happening between them, demanding to know who she was thinking of when she blew out those candles. But this time, I was just tired. Too tired to fight? Ready to let go? The sky suddenly opened up. Rain poured down, trapping me at the bus stop near the institute. The cake in my hands collapsed into a soggy mesa, reflection of me. My phone rang. Julia, again. Her voice was flat. "I'll be home later, Ethan. Stop being dramatic. This project is critical. It's bad enough you're coasting through life, but you don't get to sabotage my career. We've been married for years. How are you still so needy?" A familiar red sedan sped past, splashing filthy water all over me. Through the rain-streaked window, I saw Julia on the phone, staring ahead. Kyle, sitting beside her, caught my eye. "Ethan, did you lose your tongue?" Julia snapped, irritated by my silence. A man's voice murmured in the background, trying to calm her down. I ended the call. My phone battery died instantly. Before the screen went black, a notification popped up. Kyle posted a news story. "Thanks to my amazing mentor for the ride home. Saved me from turning into a drowned rat. Same time next year. Julia, promise." The screen went dark, reflecting my rain-soaked face. I couldn't tell if the wetness on my cheeks was rain or tears. I threw the ruined cake in the trash and trudged home through the storm. Julia didn't return that night. I curled up on the sofa and drifted into a restless sleep. When I woke the next morning, my head was spinning. I plugged in my phone. As it powered on, missed calls and a string of angry messages from Julia appeared. "Turning your phone off to disappear? Ethan, how long are you going to keep playing these childish games? My patience has a limit. Stop acting crazy. Something came up last night. I can clear some time for lunch today, okay? Is that enough? Can you just be reasonable for once?" She always spoke to me like she was granting me an audience. I didn't reply. My thumb moved on its own, opening Instagram to Kyle's profile. His latest post was from 2A, a man artsy photo of a hospital hallway. Ahead of him, a woman with a familiar, elegant silhouette carried his bag. That silhouette I'd watched it for 10 years, from college campus to wedding aisle. It was Julia. Bitterness burned in my mouth. I unfollowed Kyle and blocked Julia's number. She was the brilliant, untouchable woman on the mountaintop. I'd been climbing too long. I couldn't go any higher. After taking fever medicine, I dragged myself to work. The office AC blasted cold air, and I shivered while struggling through a tough Zoom call with a client. A coworker noticed my pale face and draped a blanket over my shoulders. Before I could thank them, the world tilted and went black. I woke up in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm. A nurse said my fever had spiked so high I'd passed out, and that a coworker had driven me there. I was surprised my whole department was guys. There were no female coworkers. The nurse smiled. She was very pretty, she said playfully. Before I could ask more, my phone rang. Julia calling from a different number. "You blocked me?" she yelled, her voice raw with anger. "Ethan, have you completely lost your mind? I told you something came up last night. And this is how you react? Do you think I have nothing better to do just like you?" I'd been a mediocre student, barely scraping into the same university as her. After a grueling for years, I'd settled for the first decent job I could find. Julia had sailed through her master's and PhD programs, becoming a rising star in her field. We'd always been from different worlds. My job, the one that kept us afloat financially, was worthless in her eyes. "I'm not making a scene," I said calmly. "You should get back to work." She paused, taken aback. Her tone softened slightly. "You better not be." Fine, let's have dinner. The Cypress Room on Newberry Street. Even dinner with her felt like a favor she was granting me. Okay, I said. I didn't refuse. There were things I needed to say to her face. After 10 years of devotion, it was time to lay it to rest. When I arrived at the restaurant, Julia still wasn't there. The mater d' seated me with a knowing smile. Ms. Vance is one of our regulars. Of course, I recognized the restaurant's luxurious floor-to-ceiling windows from Kyle's Instagram. But Julia had never brought me here before. The dinner rush came and went. Julia still hadn't shown up. The waiter kept sneaking pitying glances my way. I pretended to be fascinated by the view outside. Then I saw her through the glass, a striking figure in a black dress. Her phone rang, and she stopped, turned, and hurried back toward the parking garage. I called her. It went straight to voicemail. A few minutes later, she called back. There's a problem with Kyle's part of the project. I have to go help him. Ethan, you understand, right? I wasn't surprised she was bailing. I was used to waiting. But lately, Kyle's name seemed to come up more and more. Fine, go ahead, I said. But we need to talk face to face. Make some time. She let out a cold laugh. What could you possibly have to talk about? It's the same old story, isn't it? I've told you Kyle and I are just colleagues. You need to stop being so paranoid and insecure. I didn't argue. She hung up quickly. The food at the restaurant was surprisingly good, better than anything I could make. No wonder Julia never liked my cooking. After she started at the institute, she became even busier than during her PhD. I worried she wasn't eating properly, so I'd get up early every morning to pack her lunch before heading to my own job. Sometimes delivering that lunch was the only time I'd see her all week. She told me to stop wasting my time, that my food just wasn't her taste. It hurt for a while. But then I redoubled my efforts, searching for other ways to please her. It was just like college all over again. She was always the cold, unapproachable genius, and I was the moth drawn to her flame, chasing her relentlessly. In the end, I thought I'd married her. She once casually mentioned she liked a hearty beef and potato stew. So I taught myself to make it, burning my hands countless times trying to get it right. But I could never make it to her satisfaction. Then came Kyle, the mentee she always talked about. He was from the South and a fantastic cook. He made, she said, the best beef stew she'd ever had. I stopped making stew after that. When I got home, I packed a suitcase and called a realtor to ask about rentals. I didn't expect Julia to return. When she saw the suitcase, she froze, her expression hardening into anger. Ethan, what is this? What new game are you playing? I figured I might as well be direct. We didn't have kids. A divorce could be clean. But before I could say the words, her phone rang. She glared at me, ready to silence it. Then she saw the name on the screen, and her expression flickered. Kyle, what's wrong? Don't panic. I'm here. I'm on my way. She glanced at me with a complicated expression. Ethan, I don't want to fight. We'll talk when I get back. Kyle needs me right now. His landlord kicked him out. He has nowhere to go. For the first time, I saw Julia clearly, the untouchable campus queen, the brilliant researcher. But did she really not understand? Why would a grown man, facing a personal problem, immediately call his married female mentor, instead of solving it himself? Suddenly, exhaustion hit me like a wave. I cut her off. You should go. Don't waste any more time. It's getting late. Julia stared at me for a long moment. I'll be back soon. Wait for me. I didn't wait. After double-checking the divorce agreement I downloaded, I locked the door from the inside and slept until morning. It was the best sleep I'd had in months. I actually felt energized on my way to work. There were wet footprints by the door. Julia must have come back and found herself locked out. She had sent a few texts, which I ignored. Instead, I emailed her the divorce agreement. She called immediately. I didn't answer. A moment later, got a friend request from Kyle. The message followed. Ethan, please don't be mad at Julia because of me. She just feels sorry for me because my health isn't great. She can't bear to see me alone. She was so tired after taking care of me yesterday. Can you please stop making her worry? Actually, I should thank you. Julia said, I remind her of how you used to be. No wonder she took me under her wing as soon as I joined the lab. His messages grew sharper, more pointed. The old me would have been driven mad by those words, would have run to Julia, demanding an explanation. This time, I just swiped the notification away and ignored his request. At the office, I asked HR who had taken me to the hospital. I wanted to thank him in person. The HR manager just gave me a cryptic smile and said not to worry about it, to focus on my work. So instead, I bought coffee for the whole department. I never expected Julia to show up in my office with Kyle. Her text arrived. "I'm at the coffee shop downstairs from your building. Get down here, Ethan." That commanding tone, I knew it all too well. I valued my job. I didn't want our personal drama spilling into my professional life. I told my manager I had an emergency, grabbed the printed divorce papers, and went downstairs. Julia and Kyle were sitting by the window. Kyle was gently brushing a stray strand of hair from Julia's forehead. They looked like the perfect couple. The smile in her eyes vanished the moment she saw me. "There you are, Kyle, and I had to pause our work just for you. The entire project's timeline is going to be affected because of this. Ethan, can you stop this insanity?" I hadn't even sat down before the blame was already being piled on me. "I don't recall inviting you for coffee." Maybe my sarcasm showed too clearly. Julia froze, then hissed through clenched teeth, her anger barely contained. "Ethan," Kyle suddenly stepped forward, wearing a mask of regret. "Ethan, man, you're misunderstanding her. She was worried you'd be jealous and just wanted to explain things. I feel like this is all my fault for putting her in such a difficult position. So I came with her to apologize to you personally." Julia shot me a look of pure disappointment before turning to Kyle with an apologetic expression. "Kyle, you don't need to apologize. He's been like this for years, unreasonable, jealous, his head full of nonsense. Now he's threatening me with divorce." Her voice rose. "Ethan, have I been too easy on you?" "Julia, I can't stand to see you so torn up," Kyle declared dramatically. "Ethan, if you're angry, take it out on me. If the whole scene hadn't been so absurd, I might have been moved." A waitress hovered nearby, holding a tray with 2 coffees, unsure if she should approach. I waved her over. 2 Americanos, too bitter. I never liked them. I picked one up and threw it. The dark liquid streamed down Julia's face and hair. She stared at me, stunned. Kyle shrieked. "Ethan, you Julia?" His eyes darted around and then he was practically cradling her. "Come after me, Ethan. Don't you dare hurt her. Do you have any idea what she's given up for you? How could you do this to her?" As if waking from a trance, Julia grabbed my wrist, her grip furious. In her sudden movement, she knocked Kyle, who stumbled back into his chair. "Are you insane?" She screamed at me. "You think I won't actually go to the courthouse with you? Just try me." She was seething, but I met her gaze calmly. "Just helping you clear your head. Can you understand what I'm saying now?" I pulled my hand free, wiping the coffee off my sleeve. She watched my every move, her expression growing darker. Her simmering rage boiled over when I placed the divorce papers on the table. "You really want to divorce me?" Her voice cracked. Rising in disbelief, a flicker of triumph crossed Kyle's face before he quickly schooled it into anguish, bowing his head. "Ethan, I know you're upset because Julia was taking care of me. For her happiness, I'm willing to leave the institute. I'll give up my career. Just, please stop making things so hard for her." He spoke with deep emotion, sneaking glances at Julia, waiting for her reaction. But the scene he was hoping for never came. Julia didn't even seem to hear him. She crumpled the divorce papers in her fist, her eyes fixed on me. "Ethan, we can pretend this never happened. Let's just go home and talk." I sidestepped the hand she reached out to me, irritation washing over me. She was always so decisive when hanging up on me or standing me up. Why couldn't she understand a simple sentence now? "Julia, I'm serious. I don't want to be married to you anymore. Look over the terms. If there's nothing wrong with them, just sign." I turned to leave. For the first time in years, Julia lost her composure. "Ethan," she yelled in the middle of the crowded cafe, drawing stares and whispers. This public display was exactly the kind of undignified scene she had always despised. She hated my lack of ambition. She hated that I was too clingy. She hated that I needed her reassurance. She had always been the one on the pedestal, dispensing affection like charity, leaving me feeling like a beggar in my own marriage. And now, here she was, making a scene. There's a limit to this drama. Ethan, I'm giving you an out right now. If you don't take it, you won't get another chance. Ethan. I walked faster, closer to the door. She shoved Kyle aside as he tried to hold her back and ran to block my path. Julia, Kyle had somehow knocked over his coffee cup. Shards of ceramic littered the floor, and a piece had sliced his leg. I turned back. Julia froze, her eyes meeting mine. For a split second, I saw something that looked like a plea. Julia. It hurt so much. Kyle groaned. She glanced at him, then looked at me, her voice strained. Ethan, I have to get him to a hospital. I'll come find you later. I didn't answer her. I just walked out of the coffee shop. Back at the office, I returned to work. Before leaving for the day, I checked my phone, dozens of missed calls from Julia. I hadn't answered any of them. I didn't expect her to be. It's waiting for me downstairs. Her red sedan was parked by the entrance. She was leaning against the door, anxiously checking her phone. The moment she saw me, she rushed forward and grabbed my hand. What are you still doing here? I tried to pull away, but she held on tighter, refusing to let go. Let go of me. Julia forced a smile, her grip unyielding. Ethan, you always hated how much time I spent at the lab. Well, I took the day off to be with you, but you never answered your phone. I've been waiting here all afternoon. There was unmistakable hurt in her voice. Waiting, that was the one thing Julia had taught me to do better than anyone. In college, our friends used to joke that I was her shadow, always trailing behind her. It was the same after we got married, but the waiting grew longer, heavier, harder to endure. A few years ago, she was working day and night at the lab and developed terrible stomach problems. It took months of careful cooking to nurse her back to health. The first time I met Kyle, I was still bringing her lunch every day. The sun was blistering that afternoon as I stood outside her building, clutching a thermal container. Julia wasn't answering her phone, so I got permission from the security guard to go up. You're Dr. Vance's husband? The guard asked as he let me through. Man, you've got it made. Stay home? Cook for the wife. She brings home the big bucks. How'd a guy like you land someone like her anyway? His words were a mix of envy and contempt. I flinched. The glass door reflected my own image. Unshaven, hair a mess. Wearing a worn-out t-shirt standing in stark contrast to the polished Dr. Julia Vance, I looked completely out of place. A sour feeling rose in my chest. I had been up since dawn making her lunch before my own workday started. I hadn't even had time to shave. I have a job, I started to say. But the guard's booming voice cut me off as he waved to someone behind me. Hey, Dr. Vance, your house husband's here with your lunch. Julia stepped out of the elevator surrounded by admiring colleagues. Kyle was right behind her, young, handsome, perfectly styled, his eyes locked on Julia. In the crowd, someone bumped into her, and Kyle's arm shot out, wrapping around her waist. Careful, Julia, he said smoothly. The guard chuckled, his mocking glance flicking toward me. A bead of sweat rolled down my forehead and stung my eye. Julia walked over, nodded politely to the guard, but didn't acknowledge me. She spoke to me with the cool detachment of someone giving orders to help. We're having a team lunch today. You don't need to bring me food anymore. It's not really to my taste. I'll just order from somewhere nearby. From behind her, Kyle peeked out, smirking. You must be Ethan, right? We're all going out to eat. Why don't you join us? I'm sure the others wouldn't mind an outsider tagging along. Julia frowned at him. Kyle, don't worry about him. Just go home, she said to me, her eyes sweeping over my disheveled appearance. And when you have some free time, you should really clean yourself up a bit. I waited a long time that day. The carefully prepared 3-course meal I'd made was nearly spoiled by the time I finally ate it alone that afternoon. That night, the stomach ache was so bad, I was doubled over in bed. My tossing and turning woke her. When she found out I'd eaten the lunch she'd rejected, she told me to sleep on the couch. I have an important seminar tomorrow morning. How am I supposed to rest with you carrying on like this? Thank God I didn't eat your food. Thinking back now, it was laughable. Julia was right about one thing. My head had always been filled with nonsense, and all of it was her. I looked at the Julia standing in front of me now. She managed to smile, and it almost looked like a plea. Ethan, let's go home. It was rush hour. Familiar faces from my office passed by on the street. I didn't want to argue with her in public. I nodded and didn't resist. But back at the apartment, I stayed distant. Julia took off her coat and watched me busy myself in the kitchen. Her shoulders eased and her voice turned light, almost playful. I knew it too, I've just been bored lately, looking for trouble. You know, I could probably find you a different job if you want. She came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. Her warm breath tickled my ear. I stepped away, recoiling. I walked past her holding a single bowl of pasta. She froze. Ethan, you didn't make me anything? You said you don't like my cooking? The smile on her face cracked. The anger she'd been holding back finally erupted. You Ethan, don't push your luck. What the hell do you want from me? I swallowed my bite of food and looked at her calmly. Sign the papers. Let's get a divorce. Julia's anger broke into a sharp, hysterical laugh. She pointed a trembling finger at me. You're going to regret this. She grabbed her coat and slammed the door. She didn't come back that night. The next morning, I took the day off, met with a realtor, and signed a lease on a one-bedroom apartment. By the afternoon, I had movers clearing out the place we'd shared for years. Only then did I realize how few traces of Julia there really were. For 2 days, I had perfect quiet. I wasn't anxious at work, wasn't distracted, wasn't waiting to see if Julia would come home. I closed a huge deal, and my department announced that the new VP wanted to take us all out to celebrate. My coworkers cheered. I was in a great mood too. The commission on that deal would be significant. My salary wasn't high. I used to give most of my income to Julia. Now that I was renting alone, money was tight. My good mood shattered when Julia called. You moved out without my permission? Ethan, are you serious about this? That condescending tone, I was so sick of hearing it. I hung up on her. When she called back, I didn't answer. After leaving work early, about a dozen of us from the department went to a nearby gastropub. Our manager took a call and announced that the VP was on her way over. A knot formed in my stomach. The VP was new, transferred from corporate, and our department reported directly to her. I've been so distracted lately that I'd barely even seen her, one of my coworkers. Already a few beers in, nudged me with his shoulder and grinned. You know, I guess you could say she's your knight in shining armor. Before I could figure out what he meant, door opened and Sarah Tang walked in. Early 30s, dressed in a sharp business suit, warm and approachable smile. Sarah's eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on me, she smiled, and it clicked. She was the one who had taken me to the hospital as the night wound down. I watched a coworker rush out after his wife called to check on him. For a moment, everything blurred. I realized that in all our years together, no matter how late I worked, Julia had never once worried. When I'd asked her about it, she'd said, "You're a grown man. Can't you take care of yourself? Stop being so dramatic and just get home." I used to envy other couples their easy affection and concern for one another. Julia had just sneered, her face dark, and told me it wasn't too late to back out. She was right, it wasn't too late. I chuckled to myself and was about to call an Uber when the window of a car parked at the curb rolled down. It was Sarah Tang. She waved me over. "Ethan, it's late. Let me give you a ride." I tried to decline, but she insisted, saying that as a manager, she was responsible for her team's safety. I hesitated, then got into the passenger seat. Sarah was easy to talk to. She praised my work on the recent deal, mentioning how impressed the client was. She talked about everything under the sun, but never once brought up the pathetic state she'd found. Me and that day when she dropped me off, I thanked her sincerely. "Sarah, thank you for the ride tonight, Tan for the other day, for taking me to the hospital." Her smile deepened. "It was nothing. Just take care of yourself. We need you at your best." It was nearly midnight when I got home. I checked my phone and saw that, besides Julia's missed calls, my mom had tried to reach me too. I was debating whether to call her back when the phone rang again. "Ethan, Julia called me. She said you moved out. What's going on? My mother's voice was tight with worry. I was silent for a moment before telling her the truth. When I first brought Julia home, my parents were stunned, then overjoyed. She was beautiful, brilliantly educated, with a prestigious career already lined up. She was the kind of daughter-in-law the entire neighborhood would envy. My mother had even pulled me aside, whispering to ask if Julia was pregnant. At first they adored her. They rarely visited, not wanting to intrude. But then my father passed away, unexpectedly. We booked the first flight home, but Julia got held up by a call from the lab. That was one of the few times I truly fought with her. I flew home alone. My mother didn't ask questions, which only made her cry harder. Julia finally arrived late, but she made it to the funeral on the phone. Now, my mother let out a long sigh. I expected her to yell at me, to tell me to apologize to Julia, to save my marriage at all costs. Instead, she simply told me to take care of myself. If things got too hard, I could always come home. You've been through enough, honey. I rarely cried. But after I hung up, the tears came. Right on cue, a text from Julia arrived. Ethan, did you talk to your mother? You know her health isn't good. Are you going to make an old woman pay the price for your childish tantrum? So this was her strategy when desperate emotional blackmail. I texted back a single word, go to hell, knowing her pride. She wouldn't contact me again. I blocked her new number just in case and consulted a lawyer about filing for divorce. Julia didn't show up for a few days, but then her mother cornered me outside my office. My mother-in-law had never approved of me. She'd once told me to my face that apart from my looks, I was worthless. My education, my family, my career, none of it was good enough for her daughter. And yet Julia had married me. I used to wonder why she'd said yes. I finally remembered a joke she'd once made, Ethan's low maintenance. I don't have to waste energy trying to please him. It's so much easier that way. I'd been so blinded by love, I laughed it off. Now her mother's face was a mask of fury. She demanded to know why I wasn't at home, saying no real man would pack up and leave over a little disagreement. I didn't argue. I just asked, "Where's Julia?" Julia knew what her mother was like. If she'd sent her to ambush me, she'd be nearby, ready to reap the rewards. My daughter has important things to do. She's not some freeloader like you. If you know what's good for you, you'll go apologize to her right now. Otherwise, don't even think about setting foot in my house again. She shrieked. I kept my cool, I thought, as her voice cut like a knife. A real man? And you've got the nerve to act proud? I bet the reason Julia doesn't have kids is because there's something wrong with you. Ethan, I never should have let her marry you, she shrieked, her piercing voice drawing the attention of everyone nearby. I'd endured her for years, but I was done. I already sent the divorce agreement to your daughter, I said flatly. Why don't you do everyone a favor and convince her to sign it? As for kids, your daughter said she wanted to be child-free, but then told me I should be the one to get a vasectomy. Maybe you should ask her if the problem is on her end. She's just using me as a cover. I knew my words were cruel, and I knew she wouldn't be able to stand them. Sure enough, she clutched her chest and started cursing me. Julia appeared then, her voice sharp. Ethan, do you have to be so disgusting? Julia supported her mother while glaring at me. Her mother pointed a trembling finger at my nose. Divorce him. Divorce him right now. Let's see who else would ever marry a pathetic loser like you. Before I could answer, Julia cut her off. Mom, stay out of this. She calmed her mother, then turned to me with a pleading look. Ethan, just come home with me. I ignored her, my gaze cold as I looked at the two of them. Let me know when you're ready to sign the papers. I turned and walked into the building as Julia's voice called after me. Security, please remove the individuals causing a disturbance at the entrance. Sarah Tang appeared suddenly. The crowd of onlookers scattered, and the guards quickly blocked Julia from following me. I didn't look back. At my desk, I focused on my work. Thankfully, my coworkers who'd witnessed everything stayed quiet and treated me like nothing had happened. But Julia wouldn't give up. She began waiting for me outside my office every day at closing time. Even when I got into a taxi immediately, she'd follow me in her car. That's how she discovered my new address. The next morning, she was waiting at the entrance of my apartment complex. I couldn't help but ask, "What about your experiments? What about your project?" She mumbled, looking away. "I'll get back to it after you come home," I just laughed coldly. Got into a taxi and left her standing there. Putting Julia's harassment aside, my performance at work only improved. My boss asked me to prepare a report for the VP's office, with a promotion and a raise on the table. After discussing business, Sarah complimented me, saying I looked healthier and that my suit fit well. She invited me to dinner at an authentic Italian place she knew. I politely declined, making up an excuse. I could sense her interest, and while I was grateful for her kindness, that was all it could ever be. After leaving Julia, I finally had time and energy to focus on myself. Looking in the mirror, I saw flashes of the energetic young man I'd been in college. Back then, all my courage had been for her, for that untouchable flower on the mountaintop. Now, it was just for me. Sarah gently asked if I needed any help, saying she knew Julia had been relentless. I declined. One marriage had already consumed 10 years of my life. In the next 10, I had a lot to accomplish. I didn't have time to spare for anyone else. Months passed. Then, one day, Julia didn't show up outside my office. A pregnant colleague joked that I was finally a free man. I exhaled in relief. She was laughing as she handed me some files, when her smile suddenly froze. She clutched her stomach. I rushed her to the hospital. While waiting outside the room, I spotted Julia and Kyle. Kyle's hand was wrapped in gauze. When he saw me, his expression was a mix of surprise, resentment, and smug satisfaction. Julia stared at me in panic, let go of Kyle's arm, and walked toward me, flustered. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" "I was just bringing him for a checkup." It was rare to see her so completely disarmed. I watched her with detached curiosity. Kyle's voice cut in, no longer mild but gloating. "I guess you haven't heard. Julia and I are living together now. Ethan, if you have any self-respect, you'll leave her alone. Stop holding her back. Do you have any idea how much damage you've caused? All the meetings she's missed, the delays to the project hall because of you." "Kyle, shut." Julia shook her head frantically. "It's not what he's saying, Ethan. That night I called you, but you didn't answer. I was drunk, and I ended up at his place. He forced himself on me. As if afraid I wouldn't believe her, she shoved Kyle away hard. Julia, how could you say that to me?" Kyle stumbled into the wall, knocking the bandage from his hand. Angry red lines crisscrossed his wrist, reopening the wounds. Blood dripped onto the floor as he slid down the wall. Trembling from pain and blood loss, Julia froze, paralyzed by the sight. I stood up to get a doctor, but Julia jolted back to life and grabbed my arm. "Ethan, don't go." The disgust I felt was overwhelming. I yanked my arm free and slapped her across the face. "Julia, if you have a single brain cell left, get him some help now." She clutched her cheek, trembling, and nodded. Nurses and doctors rushed over, wheeling Kyle into an emergency room. Julia looked at me, then at Kyle being pushed down the hall, still weakly calling her name. Just then, my colleague stepped out of the exam room and froze at the sight of Julia. I looked at Julia one last time, said my final goodbye, and signed the papers. Her eyes were red and swollen with tears. Turning my back on her, helped my colleague, and left the hospital. It wasn't until much later that I learned the truth. Kyle had been struggling with depression and had been self-harming. By then, I'd been promoted to manager of a branch office. I even used my year-end bonus to take my mother on a trip abroad. After the divorce was finalized, I never searched for any news about Julia again. The next time I saw her name, it was in a local news alert. Prominent researcher attempts suicide, rescued from institute rooftop. The photo wasn't blurred. The man teetering on the edge of the roof was unmistakably Kyle. As the story exploded, rumors spread like wildfire. People whispered that Julia had used him and discarded him, driving her brilliant assistant to a breakdown. My own failed marriage with her was dragged into the spotlight. Someone leaked that our divorce had been caused by her affair with Kyle. Public sympathy for Kyle evaporated almost instantly. The internet was soon flooded with comments saying they both got what they deserved a few days later. The Institute released an official statement. Julia was dismissed from her position and transferred to an obscure post. I felt a brief, distant pang of pity, nothing more. Meanwhile, my colleague, the one I had rushed to the hospital, gave birth to a beautiful set of twins. She made me their godfather. Her husband and I became good friends, and we often took the kids to the park together. One afternoon, while their father stepped away to find a restroom, I leaned over the stroller, making silly faces at the babies. A hoarse voice suddenly called my name. Ethan, I looked up. It was Julia. She was skeletal, her face gaunt and aged, as if 10 years had passed in just one. She stared at me, then let her gaze drift to the stroller. "Long time no see," she said softly. "Yes," I murmured. "A long time. You have children now." I didn't correct her. I simply offered a polite smile. The silence between us grew heavy and awkward. I started to push the stroller away. "Ethan," she called out desperately behind me. I never got together with Kyle. That night was a mistake. I never loved him. I paused for a second, my back still to her. "Is that so?" I said calmly. "What does that have to do with me?" Without turning around, I sent a quick text to my friend, telling him I'd meet him farther ahead. Then I began to walk. Behind me, faint and broken, I heard someone crying, a desperate, hopeless sound. I didn't look back. I just kept walking forward, leaving it all behind.